Red light is burning. We are entering the most uncomfortable room in the architect's fortress. While the soft men are drowning in a sea of performative empathy, social justice platitudes, and the herd morality designed to keep them docile, the architect is performing a radical excision. In the world of 2026, where resources are tightening and the digital enclosure is closing, your kindness is often just a mask for your fear of conflict. We are entering the era of the ethics of ruthlessness, not as a tool for cruelty, but as a mandatory biological and strategic requirement for sovereignty. Let's dismantle the moral trap. From the moment you were born, the grid has been programming you with a specific brand of ethics. They taught you that selfishness is an absolute evil and that sacrifice for the collective is the ultimate good. Why? Because a man who prioritizes the collective over his own perimeter is a man who is easy to farm. The state loves your compassion because it allows them to guilt-trip you into paying for their failures. The architect realizes that common morality is a compliance protocol developed by the weak to restrain the strong. If you follow the ethics of the herd, you will share the fate of the herd. True ruthlessness is not about hatred or violence. It is about absolute priority. It is the ability to look at a situation and decide that your mission, your bloodline, and your perimeter take absolute precedence over the feelings of the social contract. In 2026, the soft man is paralyzed by moral relativism. He doesn't want to offend anyone. He doesn't want to be the bad guy. But in a landscape of predatory algorithms and resource cannibalism, if you aren't willing to be the bad guy in someone else's story, you will never be the hero of your own. You are a moral hostage to everyone else's expectations. The architect practices surgical detachment. He views his time, energy, and capital as sovereign blood. To give it away to those who have not earned it, or to those who are professional victims of the system, is a betrayal of his own existence. The soft man feels guilty for his success. He feels a responsibility to solve the world's problems. The architect knows that the only way to truly help the world is to become an unshakable pillar of power. You cannot lift anyone up if you are being pulled down into the equality pit by the weights of collective guilt. Ruthlessness is the shield that protects your focus. Furthermore, we must address the excision of the parasitic. Every soft man has a circle of energy vampires, friends, family, or associates who do nothing but drain his metabolic and financial reserves. They use moral pressure to keep him in place. How could you leave us behind? Why don't you share your win? The architect performs a social audit. If an entity is not contributing to the expansion of the perimeter, it is dead weight. Ruthlessness is the courage to cut those ties without explanation or apology. You aren't mean. You are economically honest. You are acknowledging that you only have a finite amount of neural energy, and wasting it on the unwilling is a sin against your own potential. The ethics of ruthlessness also applies to internal negotiation. The soft man is kind to his own weaknesses. He forgives himself for missing the gym, for eating the slop, or for failing to execute the trade. He calls it self-care. The architect calls it internal treason. He is a ruthless disciplinarian to himself. He knows that his primitive brain is a saboteur that wants comfort and safety. He doesn't negotiate with his laziness. He crushes it. He treats his own weak desires with the same cold indifference he treats a competitor's marketing. He is the master, and his body is the slave. This is the only way to reach biological authority. We must also talk about strategic truth-telling. The soft man lies to himself and others to keep the peace. He participates in shared delusions because it's easier than facing the brutal fact. The architect is a radical realist. He is ruthless with the truth. If a project is failing, he kills it. If an asset is rotting, he dumps it. If his own worldview is proven wrong by the market, he annihilates his old opinion and adopts the new reality instantly. He has no ego attachment to being right. He only has an attachment to winning. This ruthless intellectual honesty is what allows him to navigate the gray zones, while the soft men are still arguing over the official narrative. In the year 2026, kindness has become a commodity used by corporations and states to launder their intentions. They talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion while they build the digital ghetto. The architect sees through the empathy mask. He realizes that in a world of totalitarian empathy, the only moral act is to be efficiently selfish. By securing your own mitochondrial and financial fortress, you are creating a zone of sanity in a world of shared psychosis. You are the Noah who didn't wait for permission from the people who were about to drown. The soft man is terrified of being called cold, but in the intelligence explosion of 2026, heat is just noise. Cold is data, cold is clarity, cold is execution. The architect embraces the cold. He realizes that mercy to the parasite is cruelty to the host. If you allow the grid or the weak to consume your sovereign potential, you have failed your biological mission. You have allowed a lesser version of reality to triumph. Part 1 is the moral hard fork. Stop trying to be good by the standards of the people who want you weak. Start being effective by the standards of the person you intend to become. Ruthlessness is not a vice. It is the armor of the architect. It is the border control of your soul. Without it, you are just raw material for someone else's empire. The soft men will hate you for it, and that is the signal that you are doing it right. The soft man is a prisoner of his own social obligations. He spends his life carrying the weight of people he no longer respects, fulfilling promises made to a version of himself that is already dead, and apologizing for his own growth. He calls this loyalty or decency. The architect calls it sunk cost sentimentality. In the second stage of our protocol, we perform the surgical excision. This is the practical application of ruthlessness to your immediate environment. In 2026, where every bit of neural energy is a premium asset, you cannot afford to have social anchors dragging your metabolic engine into the depths of mediocrity. Let's dismantle the loyalty trap. The grid has conditioned you to believe that old friends and family have an eternal claim on your resources regardless of their trajectory. This is a parasitic loophole. If your circle consists of people who are still operating on the glucose standard, people who are digitally sedated, or people who resent your sovereign pivot, they are not your inner circle. They are informational pollutants. They bring the vibration of the herd into your fortress. The architect realizes that proximity is destiny. If you breathe the air of the soft men, you will eventually adopt their neural architecture. You must cut the cord without explanation or closure. Closure is a luxury for the weak. The architect only needs distance. The surgical excision requires a value flow audit. You look at every relationship in your life and ask one cold binary question. Is this entity an aggregator of power or a sink of energy? If the relationship is a sink, if it requires constant emotional labor, financial subsidies, or validation, it must be terminated. The architect does not fix people. He is not a therapist, and he is not a social safety net. He understands that competence is a choice, and those who choose incompetence are biological liabilities. By ruthlessly removing the low-voltage individuals from your perimeter, you create a vacuum that can only be filled by other high-torque operators. You are upgrading your network by clearing the cache. Furthermore, we must address the ruthlessness of time management. The soft man is polite with his time. He allows people to pick his brain. He attends useless meetings, and he engages in small talk to avoid appearing arrogant. The architect treats his time as weaponized attention. To waste a sovereign hour on a trivial interaction is a form of self-harm. You must develop a reputation for unavailability. You must be cold to the demands of the grid's social calendar. Every yes you give to a low-value invitation is a no you are giving to your empire. Ruthlessness is the ability to say no to your own mother if her drama interferes with your deep state execution. You aren't hating your family, you are protecting the mission. The soft man is terrified of being the villain in someone else's narrative. He wants to be liked. The architect realizes that being liked is a low status objective. If you are doing something of actual value in 2026, you will inevitably attract the resentment of the static class. Your success is a silent indictment of their failure. Therefore, your ruthlessness must extend to your digital presence. You do not debate with the mouth breathers on the internet. You do not defend your choices to the moral police. You practice strategic ghosting. You move in silence, leaving the soft men to argue with the ghost of who they thought you were. You have exited the argument. We must also talk about the internal excision. This is the most difficult part of the surgery. You must be ruthless with your own internal nostalgia. We all have parts of ourselves that are still soft. The part that wants comfort, the part that wants approval, the part that fears solitude. The architect views these as vestigial organs that must be cauterized. When you feel guilt for leaving someone behind, or fear of the isolation that comes with sovereignty, you must identify that feeling as a system error. It is a legacy code from your herd evolution. You don't embrace the fear, you annihilate it with logic. You remind yourself that guilt is the state's leash, and approval is the corporation's sugar cube. The soft man man thinks he is good because he is harmless. The architect knows that harmlessness is not virtue, it is lack of choice. True virtue is being dangerous and ruthless, but choosing to direct that force toward the creation of a sovereign domain. By performing the surgical excision, you are taking the force that was being diffused across 100 low-value relationships and concentrating it into a single point of impact. You are becoming a neural laser. You are no longer scattered, you are potent. This excision creates a sovereign vacuum. The first few months after you cut the anchors will be cold. You will feel the silence. The soft man panics in this silence and runs back to his toxic circle to feel connected. The architect inhabits the silence. He uses the silence to listen to his own strategic intuition. He uses the isolation to recalibrate his metabolic engine. He knows that the silence is the signal that the surgery was successful. He is now light enough to ascend. Part 2 is the operational hardening. Stop viewing people as family/friends and start viewing them as nodes in your ecosystem. If a node is providing corrupted data or draining voltage, it must be de-linked. There is no middle ground. In the year 2026, you are either a participant in my expansion or a variable to be removed. The soft men will call this sociopathy. The architect calls it biological accountability. You are finally taking ownership of the human input into your system. The soft man treats his business and his investments like they are his children. He develops emotional attachment to a failing project because he put his heart into it. He holds on to a crashing asset because he doesn't want to admit defeat. This is the narcissism of the weak. In the final stage of our protocol, we apply the law of the superior result. In 2026, the market is a cold, algorithmic execution chamber. It does not care about your effort, your intentions, or how much sweat equity you've bled. It only cares about the result. To survive, you must be more ruthless with your own creations than the market is. You must be the executioner of your own ego. Let's dismantle the persistence myth. The grid has taught you that winners never quit. This is a lie designed to keep labor batteries plugged into failing machines. The architect knows that strategic quitting is a superpower. If a project, a trade, or a business model is not hitting its metabolic milestones, you do not try harder. You kill it. You kill it fast, you kill it clean, and you harvest the remaining liquidity to fund the next strike. Ruthlessness is the ability to walk away from a sunk cost without a single backward glance. You are not giving up, you are reallocating sovereignty. You treat your projects as disposable vessels for your intent. If the vessel leaks, you sink it. Furthermore, we must address the exploitation of systemic error. The soft man wants to play fair. He wants to follow the spirit of the law, even when the lords of the grid are using that same law to strangulate him. The architect realizes that fairness is a mid-market illusion. In the gray zones of 2026, you look for the gaps, the glitches, and the asymmetries. Ruthlessness is the willingness to exploit a competitor's mistake or a system's inefficiency with maximum force. You don't warn the competition. You annihilate their market share. You don't negotiate with a dying institution. You cannibalize its remains. This is predatory efficiency. You are the cleaner of the ecosystem, removing the ineffective to make room for the sovereign. We must also talk about the ruthlessness of the ledger. The architect does not hope for profit. He demands it. He applies the ethics of ruthlessness to his own balance sheet. If an expense does not contribute to perimeter defense or capital expansion, it is a parasitic leak. The soft man tolerates waste because he wants to enjoy life. The architect knows that waste is a slow-motion suicide. He conducts a monthly purge of his lifestyle and his operations. He is ruthless with his vendors, his contractors, and his own luxuries. He knows that in the metabolic war of 2026, the person with the lowest friction and the highest reserve wins every time. He is a financial minimalist with a maximalist ambition. The soft man is terrified of competition. He wants a safe space. The architect inhabits the conflict. He knows that pressure is the only thing that creates diamond-level clarity. He uses ruthlessness to stress test his own systems. He intentionally puts his operations under simulated crisis to find the weak links. He is cruel to his own infrastructure so that the grid can't be. He understands that anti-fragility is born from the ruthless application of stress. If your system cannot survive your own internal purge, it will never survive the totalitarian final boss. The most profound application of this ethics is in negotiation and power dynamics. The soft man enters a room looking for a win-win. The architect enters a room looking for total leverage. He knows that a win-win is often just a soft man's way of saying, I'm too afraid to take it all. Ruthlessness is the ability to wait for the moment of maximum vulnerability in your opponent and then close the gate. You aren't evil, you are providing reality. You are teaching the soft man the cost of incompetence. By being ruthless in your deals, you ensure that you are only partnered with people who are as hard and capable as you are. You are filtering for excellence. Part 3 is the final realignment. Stop apologizing for your will to win. The grid wants you tame, empathetic, and predictable. They want you to feel guilt for your predatory instincts. But those instincts are the only reason your ancestors survived the Dark Ages, and they are the only reason you will survive the digital enclosure. Ruthlessness is the metabolic integrity of the architect. It is the refusal to let sentimental noise interfere with strategic signal. The ethics of ruthlessness is the final seal on your fortress. It is the border guard that ensures only value enters and only power remains. The soft men will watch your rise from the equality pit, and they will whisper about your lack of soul. Let them. While they are sharing the misery of the herd, you will be inhabiting the sovereignty of the architect. You have exited the moral grid. You are no longer judging yourself by their slave codes. You are judging yourself by the superiority of your result. The surgery is complete. The anchors are gone. The execution is absolute.